keeping pace with all the twists and turns in Formula One, well, it can feel like a race in itself sometimes.
Definitely.
And lately, the spotlight's really been fixed on Red Bull and, of course, Max Verstappen. So in this deep dive, we want to try and cut through some of that pit lane chatter.
Yeah, get right to the heart of it.
Get right to the core of what's actually going on.
Exactly. And we've got some really interesting commentary to draw on from Motorsports by Alex. Gives a pretty knowledgeable sort of insider view, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it does. On Red Bull's current performance, these persistent rumors swirling around Max's future, and Honda making it very clear they'd like to work with him again.
Very public about it, yeah.
So our goal today really is to figure out, is Red Bull's dominance actually being challenged?
Right.
Seriously.
Uh-huh.
What's the real story, behind these whispers of Verstappen maybe looking elsewhere?
Right.
And what are the implications if Honda actually managed to get that reunion?
Big questions. Okay, so let's start with Red Bull's current form, on track. Because there is this feeling, isn't there, that the car isn't quite the untouchable machine it was in previous years.
Yeah, definitely. The source we looked at, it flags this interesting quote. No quiero creerme lo que dice Norris, pero Max es muy bueno, pero tampoco lleva el 10º coche. No.
Which basically gets at, okay, Norris might be saying things, but Max is very good, yet he's not driving the 10th best car either.
Right.
It's not that bad.
No. It really boils down to this question. Is the car fundamentally less competitive?
Mm-hmm.
Or is Verstappen just driving out of his skin, kind of masking potential weaknesses?
And the analysis leans towards the car not being malissimo.
Terrible. Yeah.
Not terrible, no, but maybe difficile. Difficult. Tricky to handle, perhaps. Or maybe it just has a narrower window where it works really well.
Compared to before, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Think of it maybe like a car with huge potential, but it's super sensitive to set up driving style.
Yeah.
Makes it hard to consistently get that performance out.
Right, which makes me think of that comparison they draw with Aston Martin and Alonso,
Mm-hmm.
where Alonso's often getting results that maybe the car on paper shouldn't really be achieving, midfield maybe.
Dragging it up there, yeah.
And the source kind of hints Red Bull might be similar, that the RB21 is maybe fundamentally a car good enough for, say, 5th place on merit.
And Max is the one pushing it.
But Verstappen is consistently hauling it to 2nd, 1st, 3rd, maybe 5th sometimes, depending on the track.
Yeah, track specifics seem key this year.
So what makes it difficult? We're talking aero, suspension, something else.
Well, the source doesn't dive super deep into the technical specifics, but you look at the inconsistencies across different tracks, right?
Yeah.
Slow corners versus fast corners, for instance. That could point to an aero package that's maybe optimal in one condition, but struggles a bit outside that.
Right, narrower sweet spot.
Or maybe it just needs this incredibly precise driving style, the kind Verstappen seems to have absolutely mastered.
And the Alonso comparison fits there too, a driver who can adapt and just squeeze everything out of a package that isn't perfect.
It shows how much the driver can still make a difference, even now.
And this is where those weekend inconsistencies get really interesting. Remember the Friday long runs?
Oh yeah, the tire deg looked pretty bad for Red Bull. High degradation. Verstappen himself pointed it out.
He did. But then, come the race, his tire management seemed, well, almost unreal compared to that. More like Piastri, maybe?
While others, like Mercedes, seem to be really struggling with de Guy in the race itself.
Exactly. So how do you explain that? Is it just Max being Max with the tires? Or did they find some magic setup change between Friday and Sunday?
It's probably, a bit of both. Verstappen's known for that tire whispering ability, conserving, then pushing when needed.
He's incredible at it.
But yeah, teams make big setup changes between practice and the race all the time. They could well have found a better balance, something kinder to the tires.
But still,
the fact his degradation looked noticeably better than some others, even in cars that seemed quick overall, it does point back to his skill, doesn't it?
Yeah. It makes you wonder, how much of Red Bull's pace is actually Verstappen just compensating for a car that maybe isn't as inherently easy on its tires as, say, the McLaren seems to be sometimes?
It's a valid question.
And you get this weird feeling as a fan, or at least I do. You see these amazing drives from Verstappen really having to push, and it's fantastic viewing.
Absolutely thrilling.
But then there's this little worry underneath, isn't there? That maybe after these regulation tweaks post-Spain, Red Bull finds something big.
And that they suddenly unlock a load of performance again.
Yeah. And we go back to dominant Red Bull. And maybe slightly less exciting races up front. It's almost like you secretly hope they don't find that magic bullet.
Paradoxical, isn't it? You want the close competition. You want to see Verstappen having to work for it, showing his brilliance under pressure.
Exactly. Keep it close.
And the source kind of touches on this with that qualifying lap analysis. Remember that? Verstappen got the toe from Tsunoda.
Crucial toe, yeah. Gain time on the straight.
But Piastri was actually quicker through the corners. His entry speed was higher.
Right.
It's like that trade-off, you know? Sometimes you sacrifice a bit of exit speed to carry more momentum into the corner. McLaren seems pretty good on traction, too. Quick exits after strong entries.
Yeah, the source highlighted that last corner specifically. Piastri was slightly ahead going in, wasn't he?
He was. But Verstappen just seemed to get the power down better on exit. That better traction let him just pit Piastri right at the control line.
Tiny margin. Decided by those little details, car characteristics, driver input. Amazing.
Absolutely. Okay, so shifting focus a bit. Max's demeanor after the race.
Yeah.
He seemed quite reserved. Limited comments in the press conference, seemed to be avoiding talking about the stewards.
Yeah, noticeably so. What's the thinking there?
Well, the source suggests it could be linked to FIA regulations, you know, what drivers can and can't say about officiating, penalties, that sort of thing.
Yeah, being careful not to get fined or reprimanded.
Potentially, yeah. There's a feeling he might just be playing it safe, avoiding any trouble.
It's a bit of a shame, though, isn't it? As fans, you kind of want those raw, immediate reactions.
Gives you real insight.
Yeah, into the race, the emotions. And the source hints there might be this wider frustration among drivers generally
Yeah.
about perceived FIA overreach on maybe less critical stuff.
Yeah, a sense that maybe the focus isn't always on the biggest issues. It feels like we, the fans, maybe miss out on hearing Verstappen's unfiltered thoughts sometimes because of these constraints.
Yeah, you lose a bit of that personality, that directness.
Exactly. And that can, you know, take away from the story a little. Okay, let's move on to something else that's really bubbling up. Honda, and their very public statements about wanting Max Verstappen back in the fold.
It's fascinating. We know Honda's off to Aston Martin soon. Red Bull's going with Ford for their own engine project.
Yeah, the split is happening end of 25.
But the HRC president, Koji Watanabe, he's been really clear. He used the phrase grandezzo.
A strong desire.
A really strong desire within Honda to work with Verstappen again, which naturally immediately makes you think Aston Martin down the line.
It's the obvious link, isn't it? Why else make such a public statement now? Especially given how successful they were together.
4 titles.
4 championships together. It was an incredibly successful partnership, proven track record, strong working relationship. Watanabe even said, you know, they're committed to helping Max win a 5th title this year with Red Bull.
Which is interesting in itself.
Yeah, and then he sincerely expressed this hope for another chance to work together later. He also praised Verstappen's communication style, said he was really clear with the Honda engineers.
And they appreciated that.
Led to real dedication, admiration from the engineering side, that kind of mutual respect, that understanding. It's gold dust in F1.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But, okay, Max has that Red Bull contract, right? Until 2028.
He does. It's a long-term deal.
But, and there's always a but in F1, the source does mention these persistent rumors. Questions about the RB21's ultimate potential, maybe some worries about the 2026 Red Bull Powertrains project.
Exactly. Those uncertainties, however small they might be right now, they definitely fuel the speculation about his long-term future there.
And you look at Aston Martin. Honda Power coming? Adrian Newey just signed.
They're starting to look like a very serious proposition for the future, aren't they?
Very serious. It makes them seem like a genuinely compelling alternative.
And then you had Fernando Alonso publicly saying he'd welcome Max to the team.
Which just adds more fuel to that fire. Suggests, you know, the team might be thinking along those lines too. Ambition meeting resources.
And maybe the most telling detail, the report that Honda has apparently indicated they want input on Aston Martin's driver selection.
Ah, okay. That's significant.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Is a Verstappen-Honda reunion at Aston Martin actually part of Honda's strategic plan for their F1 return as a full works partner?
It's such an intriguing web of possibilities, isn't it? All these pieces moving around.
It really is. So if we try and bring it all together, what our deep dive into the source suggests is, well, Red Bull's performance maybe isn't quite as dominant as it looked. Perhaps relying quite heavily on Verstappen's sheer talent right now.
Seems that way.
His own future with the team looks maybe a little less certain than that contract suggests, given the performance questions, the 2026 engine situation. And meanwhile, Honda is very openly saying we'd love to have him back, with Aston Martin looking like an increasingly credible place for that to happen.
It just shows how dynamic F1 is, how quickly things can shift or seem like they might shift. So many interconnected parts.
Constantly evolving.
So, for you listening right now, here's something to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
Given everything we've talked about Red Bull's current form, Verstappen maybe being a bit frustrated, Honda making these very public overtures, what do you think would actually be the most captivating next chapter for Max Verstappen? Is it him staying at Red Bull, maybe having to fight even harder if the car isn't quite top dog? Or is it that big, surprising move to a Honda-powered Aston Martin, maybe with Newey there too, building for the future?
Or something else entirely we haven't even considered.
Exactly.
Great.
What scenario would be the most fascinating to see play out? Definitely something to ponder as this season keeps unfolding.